A hush fell over the great hall as the human fleet's banner fluttered in the recycled air. Captain Roland Harris stood at attention beside an ornate pedestal. Upon it rested a small crystal cage that glowed faintly with alien runes. Inside sat Princess Aerialis, her slender fingers wrapped around the bar. She wore a flowing gown of woven starlight threads, but her eyes betrayed terror and doubt. The ceremony began with a low hum from the ship's engines. A human diplomat stepped forward and spoke words of welcome that echoed off metal walls. Eri could not understand every phrase, but the tone was calm. She felt each word brush against her like a strange wind. Around her, human officers nodded and bowed, and a few offered polite smiles. Still, Aerialis shivered. She recalled stories of humans devouring their enemies, tales told to frighten unruly nobles. Fear clutched her heart. Her mind drifted to the emerald fields of her homeworld, Lanth. There, she had raced among wildflowers and listened to the songs of winged beasts. Every memory was bright and sweet. Here, the walls were cold and steel. Here, she was far from home and far from friends. The crystal cage felt small, as if her future were shrinking. She bowed her head and whispered a soft plea for courage. Captain Harris cleared his throat. His boots clicked on the deck as he approached. He carried no weapon at his side, only a simple sword of honor hung on his belt. Aerialis watched him with wary eyes. The stories of human soldiers were many. Some were heroes, others monsters. She wondered which Roland would be. He reached out his hand and touched the crystal cage, the runes dimming under his palm. "Princess Aerialis," he said in measured tones, "you are safe under my care. I vow to protect you until your return home. All who serve this ship must do the same." His voice was steady, and though she could not be certain, she sensed no cruelty in it. She lifted her head and met his gaze. In that moment, something shifted. A small spark of hope glimmered inside her. The diplomat stepped back, and the crystal cage dissolved into motes of light. Aerialis straightened, her trembling easing. Roland offered his arm, and she placed her hand on it with hesitance. Together, they walked down the hall. Soldiers parted before them, their armor glinting under the lights. Behind her, Aerialis heard soft footsteps. Sung Medic Liam, carrying a satchel of supplies. He bowed and whispered, "Welcome, Princess. I am here if you need help." His smile was gentle, and Aerialis felt a flicker of warmth. "He council meets to discuss your future." He paused, watching her reaction. Aerialis only nodded, her heart still racing. When Roland left, Aerialis moved slowly to the viewport. She pressed her hand to the glass and stared out at the void. Billions of stars stretched before her, and one small blue planet lay ahead. Soon she would stand before the human council, a display of fragile peace or a spark that could ignite war. She did not know which. She clutched the edge of the window and whispered to the silent stars, "Grant me strength." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Liam entered with 2 steaming bowls of soup. "You must be hungry," he said, setting them on a low table. "I made something simple. It is not your food, but it is safe." He gestured to the vegetables floating in warm broth. Aerialis hesitated, then tasted the soup. Gentle flavors filled her mouth, soothing the ache in her chest. They ate in silence, side by side. Around them, the hum of the ship's life support was steady and sure. Aerialis realized that humans could provide comfort as easily as they destroyed. She swallowed the last spoonful and looked at Liam. "Thank you," she said, her voice small, but clear. Air nodded, his eyes kind. That night, Aerialis lay on the narrow bed, the bamboo plant beside her casting soft shadows. The alien princess who had feared she would be a soldier's meal found herself held by new possibilities. Somewhere deep inside, she felt a promise. On this ship, she might find more than captivity. She might find allies, or even friends. And tomorrow her true journey would begin. The next morning dawned pale and silent. Princess Aerialis woke to the gentle hum of the ship's engines and the soft glow of the viewport. She rose from the narrow bed and smoothed her gown of starlight threads. The bamboo plant on the desk caught the light, its slender leaves swaying as if bowing to her. She inhaled deeply, feeling the stillness settle in her chest. Outside, the stars held their vigil, and Earth drew closer with each passing hour. Soft knocks sounded at the door. Aerialis opened it to find Medic Liam holding a tray with 2 cups of tea and a platter of fresh fruit. He balanced the tray with practiced ease and offered her a warm smile. "Good morning, Princess," he said. "I brought tea. It is mild but comforting." She nodded and stepped aside to let him enter. Liam set the tray on the small table and poured tea into both cups. The steam curled upward like a tiny galaxy. Ariellis accepted a cup and cradled it between her hands. The warmth spread through her fingers and into her heart. She breathed in the faint scent of herbs and felt a moment of peace. "Thank you," she said softly. "It is kind." He sat across from her and picked up a slice of pale melon. "Captain Harris asked me to check on you today," he said. "He wants to make sure you are well." Ariellis studied Liam's eyes. They were like clear pools of water, steady and honest. He spoke in simple words, gentle tone. She felt no fear with him. After breakfast, Captain Harris himself arrived at her door. He wore his uniform neatly, sword of honor at his side. "Princess," he said, inclining his head, "I wish to show you the bridge and introduce you to my senior officers." Ariellis nodded. Her heart fluttered, but she straightened her posture. "I will follow you, Captain," she replied. The corridors were wide and bright. Polished floors reflected the overhead lights. Ariellis walked beside Harris, gripping his arm lightly. They passed crew members who bowed or saluted. She wondered what they thought of her. Were they curious, wary, or hopeful? She held her gaze forward and let Harris guide her. They entered the bridge. Rows of consoles lined the walls, and holographic star charts hovered above them. Officers sat in chairs facing the forward viewport. One by one, Harris introduced them. "Commander Felix," he said, gesturing to a woman with sharp eyes. "Chief Engineer Murphy," he said to a stout man with grease on his hands. Ariellis offered polite nods in return. Each officer inclined their head in respect. Suddenly, the door hissed open and Sergeant Drake strode in. His armor was polished, but his face was stern, almost cruel. He carried a heavy rifle at his side. His dark eyes flicked to Ariellis, and she felt a chill. Drake's presence was like a shadow passing over her light. She clutched Harris's arm and forced herself to stand tall. Drake approached and saluted crisply. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low. He did not smile. "I stand guard wherever Princess Ariellis goes." Ariellis met his gaze briefly. She could not read kindness there, only duty and perhaps a sliver of distrust. She bowed her head slightly in return. Drake nodded and took a position near the door, scanning the corridor. Harris led Ariellis back to the corridor and gestured toward a side door. "This way contains the ship's living quarters. You may wish to see the common areas." She nodded. Her steps were cautious. She had never walked among so many strangers before. As they moved, she noticed Liam trailing at a discreet distance, ready to help if she needed it. They entered a wide lounge with long benches and tables. Crew members ate meals, played simple games, and spoke quietly. A few children of the crew laughed as they chased a small holodrone. Ariellis paused. The children's laughter was bright and pure. She had not heard such laughter since leaving her home. It filled her with longing and warmth. A tall man with tattoos on his arms beckoned to her. "Come, Princess," he said in a rough but friendly voice. "Join us for a meal." Harris dipped his head. "You may, if you wish." Ariellis hesitated. The thought of sitting among these humans made her pulse quicken. Yet she remembered Liam's gentle kindness and the children's laughter. She stepped forward. The man offered her a plate of roasted vegetables and grain cakes. "We grow this on Earth," he said. "I hope you like it." Ariellis tasted the food. It was earthy and filling. She smiled and said, "It is good." The crew around her chuckled softly and nodded. Drake watched from the edge of the room, arms folded. Ariellis felt his gaze but chose to focus on the warmth around her. After the meal, Liam guided her back to the corridor. "You did well," he said quietly. Ariellis looked at him and saw pride in his eyes. She felt a small surge of confidence. "Thank you," she whispered. "I try to learn." He smiled as they walked. Harris asked, "Are you comfortable enough to rest before we meet the council?" Ariellis nodded. Fatigue from her journey weighed on her. Harris led her back to her chamber. Once inside, he paused at the door. "You show courage, Princess. You face the unknown with grace. Remember, you are not alone." He bowed and left Isperd to the stars. "Thank you for giving me new friends." And somewhere deep in the void, the ship carried her toward a future she dared to believe could be bright. A sudden alarm jolted the ship's calm. Red lights flashed along the corridors and klaxons blared. Princess Ariellis sat at her desk, the book of Earth's history still open. She looked up as the metal walls shuddered. Liam burst into her chamber, eyes wide. "Pirate raiders," he said. "They have breached the outer hull. We must move quickly." Ariellis rose, heart pounding. She clutched the pendant of her mother's line and followed Liam into the corridor. Outside, chaos reigned. Crew members raced past with weapons drawn and power cables sparking. The ship's life support groaned under the strain. Ariello saw Sergeant Drake barking orders to a fire team. His face was grim as he pointed toward a torn bulkhead where smoke seeped in. Roland Harris appeared beside Drake, sword in hand. He signaled to the nearest crew, "Hold the line here." The soldiers formed a tight circle, shields up. Ariel froze at the sight of the breach. She had never seen battle so close. The pirates boarded through a jagged hole in the hull, their dark armor and rough manners a stark contrast to the polished human crew. One pirate swung a heavy blade, slicing control panels and sending sparks into the air. A human soldier fell back, injured. Drake charged forward, blocking the pirate's path. His rifle butt smashed against the pirate's helmet, and the intruder staggered. Liam took Aurelius's arm. "Come," he urged. "We will go to the safe chamber." He led her through twisting passages, past wounded crew and flickering lights. Aurelius's gown of starlight threads caught on a pipe, tearing the fabric. She paused, breath catching, but Liam gently eased her free and urged her onward. She heard her own heart hammering in her ears. They reached the safe chamber, a reinforced room with thick walls. The door slid shut behind them. Inside, a small console displayed the ship's status, hull integrity dropping, life support weakened. Ariellis pressed her back against the door and watched the line of defense through the view. Roland stood at the center, directing soldiers and civilians alike. Drake fought at his side, moving with precise fury. Humans fell, but Roland's voice rang clear. "Stand your ground. Protect the princess." Outside, a pirate lancer fired an energy bolt that exploded against the door. The safe chamber rattled. Ariella stepped back, frightened. Liam placed a hand on her shoulder. "They will not break through," he said. She nodded, closing her eyes and whispering a prayer to her ancestors. Behind her eyelids, she saw the fields of Lantheria, green and wide. She imagined the wind. On her face, the scent of wildflowers. She drew strength from those memories. After a tense moment, the corridor fell silent. The console showed the pirates being driven back. Roland's calm voice came through the intercom. "All clear. Return to your stations when able." Ariellis exhaled. The chamber lights brightened, and a crew member opened the door. Ariellis and Liam stepped out into a corridor lined with medics attending to the wounded. Robert, a medic she had not met, knelt beside a crew member with a burned arm. He glanced up. "Princess," he said gently, "would you like to help distribute supplies?" Ariellis looked at her torn gown and shook her head. "I cannot," she whispered. Robert smiled kindly. "You can just talk with them. Your words are as healing as any salve." Ariellis hesitated, then approached a trembling sailor whose leg was bandaged. She knelt and took the sailor's hand. "You fought bravely," she said. "Thank you for protecting me." The sailor's eyes filled with surprise. "It was my honor, Princess," he said. Around them, the wounded looked up and offered nods of thanks. Ariellis felt warmth fill her chest. She realized that her presence here was not a burden but a bridge. Captain Harris entered the corridor, his uniform stained with soot but his posture proud. He saw Ariellis among his crew and nodded. "Your courage helped them," he said quietly. Ariellis blushed. "I only spoke," she replied. "They have courage of their own." Harris smiled. "And your words gave them hope." He placed a firm hand on her shoulder before moving on to assess the damage. As the ship's systems came back online, Ariellis and Liam walked toward the bridge. The corridor lights returned to their normal glow, and the walls no longer shook. The stars outside glimmered through narrow windows. Ariellois pressed her palm to the glass, feeling the coolness of the pain. She thought of the line of soldiers, of Drake's fierce defense, and of Roland's leadership. Humans had fought not for conquest but for her safety. Liam observed her in silence. "You did well," he said softly. Ariellos turned to him. "I was afraid," she confessed. "But seeing them fight for me, it changed something." He nodded. "They do not all see you as strange or alien. They see you as someone they must protect." Ariellis smiled, the first true smile since her journey began. That night, Ariellis returned to her chamber with Liam at her side. The torn gown had been replaced by a simple robe. She sank onto the narrow bed and looked at the pendant of her mother's line. The battle had shown her the strength of humans and their capacity for honor. She closed her eyes and whispered thanks to the stars. Tomorrow she would face the council, but tonight she would remember the faces of those who had risked their lives to keep her safe, and she would carry their bravery with her into every moment that followed. The morning light filtered through the narrow viewport as Princess Ariellis awoke to the steady hum of the ship. She stretched and sat up on her bed, the simple robe still tied at her waist. Last night's battle lay heavy in her mind. but in its place grew a new feeling, trust. She rose and opened the door to find Liam waiting with a small tray of fruit and water. Good morning, he said softly, placing the tray on the desk. The council meeting is in 2 hours. Captain Harris will escort you. Ariellis nodded, her stomach fluttering with nerves. She touched the pendant of her mother's line and took a deep breath. Thank you, Liam, she whispered. After breakfast, Roland Harris appeared at her door. He bowed his head. Princess, we depart for the council chamber shortly. I have arranged for your escort. He gestured to a group of officers assembled. Iobert, the medic, gave Ariellis a reassuring smile before he and Liam stepped back to stand guard at her sides. Captain Harris guided her toward the front row, and she took her seat on a simple chair, polished smooth. Her heart pounded as she surveyed the assembly, diplomats in colorful robes, soldiers in crisp uniforms, and observers leaning forward in anticipation. A hush fell. The human ambassador, a tall woman with kind eyes, rose from her seat. She spoke, in clear tones. We welcome Princess Ariellis of Lantharia. We honor her courage and her people's trust in us. May today's dialogue bring lasting peace. She gestured toward Ariellis, and a respectful clap rippled through the crowd. Ariellis rose, her gown of woven starlight threads shimmering under the lights. She bowed her head and addressed the assembly in her measured voice. Taught by Liam and Roland's simple lessons, I come from a world of green fields and gentle winds. We sent our princess to your care because we sought friendship with humanity. Today, I stand before you not as prey, but as partner. She paused, meeting the eyes of each delegate. Let us build a future where our children learn each other's languages and share our knowledge. Murmurs of approval followed. A delegate from the Human Council nodded and replied, We accept your hand in peace, Princess Ariellis. Let us begin discussions on trade, culture, and defense. Ariellis felt warmth in her chest. This was more than ceremony, this was the beginning of a true alliance. The next 2 hours passed in earnest debate. Ariellis listened as ambassadors discussed exchange of food crops, medical technology, and the establishment of a joint academy for young learners. She spoke twice, suggesting that Lantharian healing herbs could benefit humans, and humans could teach starship engineering to her people. Each suggestion earned nods and scribbles on data tablets. Midway through, Sergeant Drake stood and spoke. Surprising many, his voice was firm but respectful. Princess, I fought to keep you safe. I have seen your courage and your kindness. I pledge my support to this treaty. He returned to his seat, and the chamber erupted in applause. Eyes filled with gratitude. Even the stern guard could see her worth beyond a political pawn. After the council, Ariella stepped into a smaller room for a private debrief with Captain Harris and Ambassador Celine. They spoke of the next steps, scouts to travel to Lan, a goodwill mission led by Harris, and student exchanges. Ariellis felt awe at the plans unfolding. She realized her journey had shifted the galaxy. Outside the debrief room, Liam and Robert waited. Liam offered her a cup of tea. Ariellos accepted, and leaned against the wall, relief and excitement mingling. You were amazing, he said quietly. You spoke from your heart. She smiled and raised her cup. We did this together, she replied. Your help made it possible. As they walked back toward her quarters, Ariellis noticed a small group of crew members gathered in the lounge. They stood to salute her, and she offered a shy bow. Children smiled and waved. She crossed the room and knelt to speak with a young engineer. Your repairs saved lives, she said. He beamed. We're proud to serve you, he said. That evening the ship drifted peacefully through the void. Ariella stood at her viewport, the earth a pale blue marble in the distance. Beside her, Liam handed her a small book of human poetry. For your collection, he said with a wink. She accepted the gift and opened its pages. As stars twinkled beyond Ariellis read verses of friendship and hope. She felt her fear dissolve into wonder. Humans were not monsters. They were dreamers and builders. She closed the book and whispered, To the silent galaxy, thank you for showing me the best of both our worlds. And somewhere in the depths of space, a princess found her purpose as a bridge between two worlds, and the legacy of her courage began to shine. A pale dawn greeted the human fleet as it approached Lantharia's orbit. Princess Ariello stood on the viewing deck beside Captain Harris and Medic Liam. Below them, the green continents of her home world spread out like a living tapestry. She pressed a hand to the glass and felt her heart swell with both pride and nerves. We will arrive on the surface in 2 hours, Harris said quietly. The council elders await you. Ariellis nodded. She smoothed her simple robe and turned to Liam. Thank you for standing by me. she whispered. What is it? Ariellis asked softly. Harris frowned at the readouts. We have a small leak in the air brake system, he said. I will go check. He unbuckled his harness and moved down the narrow aisle. Drake followed, rifle slung but held loosely. Liam leaned forward. I will come too, he said. You should stay here. Ariella shook her head. I will go, she replied. She rose and followed them toward the bow dot in the cramped compartment. Harris knelt beside a panel that hissed. Bright sparks flew from a broken wire. Murphy handed him a tool. I can fix this, he said without looking up. Drake held a small light. Ariellis watched as Murphy's steady hands reconnected circuits. The hiss stopped. The shuttle lurched, but the alarms ceased. Ariellis let out a breath. Thank you, she said to Murphy. He smiled briefly and nodded. Harris waved her back to her seat. All systems normal, he announced. We are safe. Ariellis returned to her place, chest still racing. Liam handed her a cloth and offered calm words. She wiped her palms and sat, her gaze on the glowing planet below. After minutes that felt like hours, the shuttle slid through clear sky and descended toward a landing pad carved into a hillside. Elders in robes of woven silk waited beside a semicircle of Lantherian guards. Their faces were serene yet curious. As the hatch opened, fresh air filled the cabin, scented with wildflowers and damp earth. Ariella stepped onto the platform first. She felt the gentle breeze of home and closed her eyes in gratitude. Behind her, Harris, Liam, Drake, and Murphy formed a protective line. At the front, Elder Cale approached with hands clasped. His silver hair and bright eyes marked him as a leader of great wisdom. Daughter of Lantheria, Cale said, voice rich with welcome. We are honored to see your safe return. He bowed slightly. Ariella smiled and knelt. I am honored by your welcome, she replied. She rose, offering her hand. Cale placed a small crystal in her palm. This is a seed of the ancient grove, he said. Plant it among humans and let our bond grow. Ariellis clasped the crystal and felt warmth spread through her. She looked over the human delegation. I bring friendship, she said softly, and I will help this seed find soil on both worlds. The gathered Lantherians and humans nodded in approval. The group moved down a path into a nearby grove, where human scientists and Lantherian biologists worked side by side. Small seedlings sprouted in neat rows. Ariellis watched as a human engineer knelt beside a Lantherian botanist, carefully measuring soil nutrients. She thought of Liam tending to her wounds and Drake defending her life. Humans and Lantherians could learn from each other as they walked. A sudden rumble echoed through the trees. Dark clouds gathered overhead. A flash of lightning split the sky. The grove's protective dome flickered. Harris raised an arm. Storm incoming, he shouted. Seek shelter. Panicked voices rose as crew and scientists hurried to secure equipment. Ariellis spotted a young Lantherian child, frozen with fear. The boy's eyes were wide, tears streaking his cheeks. Ariellis knelt beside him. It is only rain, she said. Gently, I will keep you safe. She placed him in her arms, wrapping her arms around him like a shield. The boy clung to her, his tears slowing. Nearby, Drake and Murphy guided Harris toward a sheltering hole. Liam rushed to Ariellis, offering his arm. Come, he said. Ariellis stood, child in arms, and followed him. Others joined, moving toward a stone pavilion at the grove's edge. Inside, the storm battered the dome. Water streaked down the glass, and thunder shook the ground. Ariellis held the boy close. He looked up at her, eyes still fearful. She stroked his hair. Look at me, she said softly. You are brave. He nodded and leaned into her. Around them, humans and Lanth huddled together, their differences forgotten in the storm. Her. Harris and Drake joined hands in silence. The seedlings around them seemed to lean toward the new crystal. As day turned to evening, Lantheria's 3 moons rose in the sky. Lanterns of bioluminescent petals lit the grove in gentle colors. Lantherian musicians played soft melodies on stringed instruments. Humans offered thin slices of roasted root and sweet nut cakes. Ariella stood at the center, seeing 2 worlds celebrate as one. She lifted a cup of spiced fruit wine and spoke aloud. To Lantheria and Earth may our friendship grow like this seed, strong and life-giving. The crowd cheered, and laughter filled the grove that night. Ariella stood by the newly planted seed, its small leaves shining in the moonlight. She felt hope and peace. Humans had become more than strangers. They had become allies and friends. She closed her eyes and whispered a final prayer. May our worlds flourish together. And in the silent grove, under twin moons, a princess envisioned a future born from courage, trust, and Unity. Don single quotes as pale light filtered through the viewport. As Princess Ariello stirred from sleep, her chamber felt warmer now, filled with the soft hum of life support and the gentle thrum of the newly planted seed's growth pod beside her bed. She rose and wrapped a simple shawl around her shoulders. Today would be the day she joined the mixed expedition to study Lanthria's ancient library, a treasure trove of knowledge her people had long preserved. A soft knock sounded on the door. Medic Liam entered, holding 2 cups of hot herbal tea. "Good morning, Princess," he said quietly, setting the cups on the desk. "The team awaits your arrival." Ariella smiled and accepted a cup. The warm liquid tasted of sweet petals and mint. She sipped slowly, feeling its calm spread through her when she finished. Captain Harris arrived with Commander Felix and Chief Engineer Murphy. Roland bowed his head. "We leave in an hour," he said. "Please be ready." Ariella nodded, and touched the pendant of her mother's line. The weight of her duty reminded her of the path she had traveled from captive princess to champion of unity. She felt pride and responsibility entwined in her chest. Outside her quarters, Roland led the small group across repaired corridors and down to the shuttle bay. The earlier storms had been blamed on atmospheric disturbances near the library's high plateau. The library itself was carved into a mountain, its spires reaching toward the sky like stone fingers. Humans and Lantharians had built a protective field around it to guard against weather and time. The shuttle's engines whined as it lifted off. Harris gave a brief safety briefing, his voice steady. Ariella sat between Liam and Murphy, Drake at the door with rifle slung but held loosely. As the shuttle climbed, Lantharia's forests stretched below, green and golden in the morning sun. She stared in wonder, her heart full of the joy she had once thought lost. After a short flight, the shuttle entered a clearing. The library's walls rose before them, ancient stone etched with glowing runes. The protective field shimmered in the air, and vines of silver leaves climbed its surface. Harris guided everyone to disembark. The ground was cool beneath Aurelius's sandals, and the scent of moss and old parchment filled her lungs. A Lantharian archivist named Solara greeted them. Her skin gleamed with pale blue patterns that marked her scholarly caste. She bowed to Ariella. "Welcome, Princess," she said. "This library holds the wisdom of our ancestors." She gestured to the great doors. "Please enter." Inside, rows of towering shelves stretched into darkness. Scrolls and crystal tablets lay in careful order. Light filtered through colored windows, casting patterns on the polished floor. Ariella touched a smooth column and traced the carved symbols. She felt a hum of ancient energy, as if the building itself remembered every footstep. Solara led the group to a circular chamber at the center. A crystal chandelier hovered overhead, its facets catching the light. On a pedestal lay a large tome bound in leafed silver. "This is the Chronicle of First Contact," Solara explained. "It records the first meeting of humans and Lantharians centuries ago." Aurelius's eyes wide. "Ned." She knelt and lifted the book's cover. Its pages shone with delicate script and painted scenes. Commander Felix peered over her shoulder. "These illustrations show humans and Lantharians sharing food and music," he said. Her heart warmed. The images reminded her of the seed ceremony. She traced a painted figure shaking hands with a human envoy. "They wore simple clothes," she said softly. "They looked like friends." Murphy examined the protective field's readings on a small device. "The field is stable," he said. "No storm threat for hours." Drake studied the books. "Security patterns, all is secure," he confirmed, surprising Ariella with his calm interest. She saw that even the stern guard valued knowledge. As they explored, Ariella noticed a hidden doorway behind the pedestal. The arch was masked by woven ivy. "What lies there?" she asked Solara. The archivist smiled. "A secret vault," she said. "It holds artifacts too fragile for open display." She pressed a rune and the ivy shifted, revealing a narrow passage. Harris signaled the group to follow. Ariella led the way, lantern in hand. The tunnel sloped down to a small chamber lined with glass cases. Inside each lay a relic, an ancient star map, a delicate crown of moonstone leaves, a ceremonial blade of carved crystal. She approached the star map. Its surface showed a cluster of stars, linked by glowing lines. One marked Earth's solar system. "They charted our path here," Ariella whispered. She felt awe at the thought that ancestors had known of humans long ago. She turned to Liam. "They dreamed of this meeting," she said. "We stand on their dream." He nodded, eyes bright. Commander Felix knelt by another case. "This crown belonged to Queen Selena, who first signed the alliance treaty," he said. Ariella imagined the queen placing it on her head. She pictured the ceremony's warmth and hope. She felt connected to those who had paved the way. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The protective field pulses glowed red. Alarms echoed. Solara gasped. An earthquake, she said. The mountain is unstable. Murphy checked his device. We must evacuate, he said urgently. Harris barked orders. Everyone back to the shuttle. Now, Ariellis clutched the star map case as they raced through the tunnel. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the echo of shifting rock filled the air. She stumbled, but Liam caught her arm. Drake fired warning shots into the ceiling to clear falling debris. They burst into the sunlight as the tunnel entrance collapsed behind them. The group sprinted across the clearing. The library's protective field flared and then dimmed. Vines and stones rained down on the entrance. The doors were sealed forever. Ariellis watched as the ancient doorway vanished under rubble. She felt sorrow for what was lost of the vaults. Secrets, but also relief that they had escaped. Harris ushered them into the shuttle. Engines roared as it lifted off. Ariellis pressed her hand to the star map case, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked back at the ruined entrance, then turned to the shaken team. We survived together, she said softly. We honor those who built this place by carrying their story in our hearts. Liam sat beside her, offering water. She drank and felt the cool liquid soothe her. Drake closed his eyes in exhaustion. Felix patted Ariellis's shoulder. Murphy wiped dust from his brow. The shuttle banked toward orbit, and Lanthera's landscape sprawled below. As they flew, Ariellis cradled the star map case. Despite the loss of the vault, she held in her hands the symbol of ancient hope. She whispered to the stars, "Our journey continues, and somewhere beyond the mountains and memory." The legacy of first contact lived on in her determined smile. The shuttle glided smoothly through space. As Princess Ariellis held the star map case gently on her lap, she gazed at the swirling clouds of Lantheria below, remembering the urgent flight from the collapsing library. Beside her, Captain Harris consulted the console, charting their course back to the fleet's command ship. Medic Liam sat quietly, his eyes on Ariellis with concern and pride. After a tense silence, Ariellis spoke softly. "We carried hope from the vault. Though the entrance is lost, the star map remains. It shows the path of unity." Harris nodded. "Your people's legacy will guide us now," he said. Drake leaned forward from his seat. Though stern, his voice held respect. "We fought for you, Princess. Now we will fight for that legacy." Ariellis smiled, feeling warmth in her chest. As they approached Docking Bay 3, Robert and Engineer Murphy waited on the platform. The shuttle doors opened with a hiss, and they stepped onto the gleaming floor of the command ship. Crew members paused in their tasks to bow in respect. Ariellis felt a wave of gratitude. Humans truly honored her as more than a symbol, honored her as a friend. Captain Harris led her to the communications hub, where Ambassador Celine awaited. The room was bright with holopanels showing the battered library and its hidden vault sealed under rubble. Selena's eyes were sad but hopeful. "Princess, the pictures show the collapse," she said. "We mourn what was lost but celebrate what survives." She gestured to the star map display. "This gift will guide our council's next steps." Ariellis stepped forward and placed the crystal case on the table. She spoke in clear tones learned from her time among humans. "This map is a promise from our ancestors. It charts our meeting and the path to peace. Let it remind us that unity is worth protecting, even when storms strike." She paused and looked each person in the eyes. "We must stand together, always." The room fell silent. Then Celine smiled and touched the case lightly. "We will honor this promise," she said. Officers nodded, and the captain tapped a command on the console. The holomap expanded, showing routes between Lantheria and Earth, marked in glowing lines. The lines spread across the stars, weaving to worlds together. After the briefing, Ariellis was free to walk the ship. She found small groups of crew, gathered to see her. A young engineer named Kara offered her a data crystal. "This holds our repair logs and your library report," Kara said. "It is our work for you." Ariellis accepted it, touched by their dedication. She placed her hand on Kara's shoulder. "Thank you for your service," she said. The engineer beamed. Next, Ariellis visited the mess hall. The crew had prepared a feast in her honor. Dishes from Earth and Lantheria blended together. There were spiced grain cakes beside sweet flower nectar, roast vegetables beside seasoned tubers. Ariellis sat among humans and shared laughter and stories she learned of sailors' homes, of families waiting for them on distant colonies. They asked about her world, and she spoke of emerald fields and silver rivers. Sergeant Drake approached with a small wooden box. Inside lay a polished stone carved with both the Lantherian leaf and the human star. "We made this for you," Drake said quietly. "So you remember us?" Ariellus took the stone, feeling its smooth surface. "I will carry this always," she replied, placing it over her heart. In that moment, she saw the shielded guard not as a stranger but as a protector who had come to trust and respect her later. As night fell and the stars outside the viewport sparkled, Ariellus returned to her quarters. Meneclium followed with a final cup of tea. She accepted it gratefully. "Tonight is mine to think," she said. Liam nodded and departed quietly. Ariella sat by the viewport, sipping the tea and reflecting on her journey from fear and doubt to hope and unity. She opened the star map case and unrolled the delicate chart on her desk. Each line and symbol told a story of first contact and peace. She traced a route with her finger, imagining the journeys of diplomats and traders who would follow. She thought of the joint academy for young learners, the shared gardens to be planted on Earth, and the healing herbs Lanthoria would send in return. The bamboo plant in her room rustled gently in the recycled air. Ariellus touched its leaves and whispered, "We grow together." She placed the carved stone at the base of the plant, a reminder of the bond between two peoples. Moonlight filtered through the viewport, casting a soft glow on the seedling beside it. As sleep beckoned, Ariellus lay on her bed and closed her eyes. She dreamed of fields where human and Lantherian children ran together, sharing games and stories. She saw ships carrying goods and culture between worlds. She felt the warmth of unity and the promise of a brighter future. When morning came, the command ship would arrive at the council summit. Ariellus would stand on a grand stage, not as a captive princess, but as an ambassador of peace. She knew the road ahead would hold new challenges, storms, both literal and political, but she was no longer afraid. She carried her ancestors' legacy, the courage of her friends, and the trust of two worlds. And so, beneath the silent stars, Princess Ariellus rested, her heart and mind ready for the next step in a journey that began with fear but would end in hope. The galaxy watched, and in its vast expanse, a bridge between Earth and Lanthoria shone like a single guiding star.